All right, we're back. We're heading into round 6, our last round of the Swiss. We're going to see who makes the top 8, and then we're going to watch the top 8. We got a couple hours left in this show. Hopefully you're sticking around. Hopefully you're enjoying yourself so far. We said goodbye to Julian Knob, and now we've got in Anuraag Das, who is usually full of energy. Let's see it. There he
Hey,
is.
that's
Hey.
me. I'm actually really hyped to be here. I've been watching the tournament so far, and I got to say it's been a blast. It's been an absolute blast here, and I'm looking forward to see like how the top 8 shapes up and what we're going to see. But yeah, glad to be here, Joe. Very excited.
Yeah, good. I'm glad to have you. You're always ready to drop knowledge and give us your take on what players are doing, and we got to get more on corrective behavior, like what players are doing wrong. I mean, that's exciting stuff. People love to hear that. At least I do. But you're here. We're getting round 6 ready to go. Round 5, I guess, is tailing off. There's still a match playing, but I'm told you had a surprise for me. Now, your deck, your deck that you submitted for this event, I haven't looked at it, but I guess it's not your usual fare.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I came here with a surprise, it was me dressed up in a shark costume.
Yeah,
Production.
and I'm disappointed. You have the snazzy background, but not a costume.
I had to tone it down so I didn't look too strange this time around. But yeah, slight betrayal, Joe. Let's take a look at the list, but it's not what you expect from me normally, right? Like I would normally play, blue white control. I've even got my Azoria shirt on, but today, if I had to pick a deck to play in the tournament, it'd be one of two choices. This is the first choice, Temur Delver. And I mean, this is a deck that has been tried and true. We literally just got out of a format where Temur Delver was the best deck with Oko and Dreadhorde. But now that those two cards have been banned, the texture of this deck has definitely changed by a lot, right? So you can see the threat suite is now, more reliant on Tarmogoyfs and Hooting Mandrills. But what I really love about this deck, this archetype, is that you get to play my favorite fair strategy in the format right now, which is just Sylvan Library and Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, right? Uro is just a ridiculous card that somehow evaded, just getting banned in the last, on February 15th, and I'm not even sure if it's supposed to stay or not, but if it's legal, I'm definitely going to be playing it. And the best card to pair with it by far is Sylvan Library.
This is a very different Delver deck. And a few times lately I've played against Delver with main deck Sylvan Libraries, and yeah, I didn't really know the numbers. And you're playing 3? You're playing Uros? Okay, I can see that. You're playing Dead Gone. Like, I respect the card Dead Gone, but how did that happen?
Yeah, the truth is, I don't build decks that much anymore. I just talked to one of my podcast co-hosts, Daniel Gochel, aka Gooey Ducat, who is probably one of the best players in Magic right now today. And he came up with this list. He's been playing it for a while, and he was just like, yeah, this is just like a bunch of cards that I like doing. Dead Gone is one of those flexible cards. It's an early game interaction for something like Enemy Delver of Secrets, but also handles crazy threats like Merit Lodge, or if you need to bounce like a Gurmag Angler, things like that. It's flexible, a little bit clunky sometimes, but does get the job done when you need it to.
Yeah, this is definitely out there as far as, I mean, there's 20 land in this deck. I counted it twice to make sure because I thought that was so surprising. But yeah, this is certainly a departure, I would say, from stock Delver last format.
Yeah,
it looks almost pre-boarded with the Sylvan Libraries.
I know, and that's the one thing too, right? There's so many matchups where Sylvan Library can just you resolve that card on turn 2 with a Daze or a Force or something like that, and then you just start snowballing so hard because in most matchups you just get to immediately pay 8 life, draw a couple Force of Wills, then land that Uro, gain some more life, pay some more life, draw some more cards, and then rinse, repeat, get your Delvers and Tarmogoyfs out, and then you just, before you know it, you've literally drowned your opponent in so many cards. It's ridiculous, And I think part of the reason this is Sylvan Library is playable is because of Uro, but then the real synergy I think is between Uro and Wasteland. That is a huge interaction, being able to play your turn 3 Uro and then put a Wasteland into play, set your opponent back, or even you could Daze and then put the land you bounce back with Daze into play. A lot of sweet tricks and things that you can do here. And honestly, that's a good point that you bring up. We've got so many lands in this deck, right? I remember back when Threshold was the thing to do with Nimble Mongoose and Stifles, and you had 18 lands only, but this is a beefier deck. You need your mana sources. It's almost less Rug Delver, Rug Tempo, and more Delver mid-range,
Yeah. No, this is cool. This is something that I've probably played against, but not recognized exactly the changes that were in the deck until looking at it right now. This is probably good stuff. And you feel you're switching over to Delver. You're playing it because of Uro, or you're playing it, but you're playing Uro in some of your control decks too. So that can't be the only reason you abandoned your normal ways of doing things.
True. Yeah. I think with the banning of Arkham's Astrolabe, one thing that's fundamentally changed is how these control decks are able to set up their mana and leverage their mana. I think a deck like Delver is definitely able to tap out every turn, or at least this build is able to tap out every turn, which is really important at just like cementing your the foundation of your strategies and your plans of attack and things like that. Whereas control is just like predicated on holding up, removal, and suboptimally, like one turn you don't get to cast a ponder. Okay, and then that could snowball into this, and that. Like we've seen today already multiple times where the control deck has come in and has tried to put up a fight against when we watched Mark Eric Vogt against Elves, with the Omnath and the Uro there, or then when we watched the Jeskai player, battling against Kellen Pastor. That was, those are the sort of situations where it's just like, look at all the mana that just doesn't get used, right? And so then playing this deck, I feel like you get to shore up that one hole. You get to be very proactive. The format with the diverse threats that are in, like all the planeswalkers and all the value-oriented spells and things like that.
You just have answers to everything. You have your counters and your bolts. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at my submission. Very similar to what Kellen Pastor was playing, we saw a few rounds ago. He actually took inspiration from my list and someone else who'd been working on the deck. This is an older style deck that has come back in. It's been repowered up by Mesmeric Orb, giving it some more options. The Artifact Storm deck, as Kellen called it, which I actually prefer to the name Keyforge. And Anuraag, I'm sure you've played against things like this over the years. You've seen it occasionally. If you're unfamiliar with the deck, viewers, we're basically got 8 powerhouse cards in the bottom left. In the Mystic Forge and the Karn Great Creator. A lot of artifact mana to support them. Some redraws with Echo of Aeons, which is castable immediately if you have Lion's Eye Diamond to combo with it. And then just defensive stuff. Specifically defense grid to defend against counters. And I made the decision to remove the Ensnaring Bridge from the main deck because I didn't feel like creature decks in general were fast enough to really threaten you. And this is what we end up with. An Artifact Storm deck. And if we get the pairing we're hoping for, we're going to actually get to watch this round, a matchup between Temur Delver and the Artifact Storm deck. So we'll see if that actually lines up the way I hope it does. But so those are the decks that Anuraag I would play. And I don't know. I don't know that I would choose that matchup for myself for the decks. I don't feel like I'm in terrible shape. It really is going to depend on how many mulligans I take, as the Artifact Storm deck does mulligan a lot. And the Delver deck is fairly good at defending itself, especially in the developing turns of the game.
Yeah, that's kind of tricky. I mean, I like that this feels like just like a 2021 version of Four Horsemen with the Mesmeric Orbs and the Basalt Monoliths, but somebody in chat can correct me because I think that was like way before my time. But yeah, like you mentioned, right? This is a deck that like has really expensive spells, really big payoffs. You've got, Karn the Great Creator at 4 mana, and something like Daze, something like Force of Will on a very early turn is going to be enough to, or is going to be a big setback, I guess I'd call it. So really, like you mentioned, the big thing first is making sure that you have a hand that has a lot of mana that you can pay through Spell Pierces and Dazes if they're in the opposing decks. And then after that, you're just looking for threats and resiliency to Wasteland, right? So you're right. It's going to be complex, but I think the early turns are going to dictate like a huge portion of how the match plays out.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and look at the players that we actually have for this round and their takes on the decks that we just talked about, as they're bound to be somewhat different. We have Caleb Yetman playing Temur Delver. And this is actually dramatically different from what you were presenting, as this is basically Blue-Red Delver with green cards in the sideboard, as opposed to what you just showed us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing that I'm noticing here is just the construction of the mana base, right? I think that's where we start when we look at almost any deck in Legacy to, identify nuances. And the 2 cards that I'd like to shout out are just like the Snow-Covered Island and the Snow-Covered Mountain. And those are definitely more, just like 2-color elements, more blue-red-esque elements, as opposed to like actual Temur Delver, Rug Delver. And honestly, the reason to do this, it's because you want to beat Wasteland, right? Like that's one of the reasons to play Blue-Red Delver is that your basics in the Delver Mirrors and in other denial matchups are so powerful at letting you continue to play your threats, continue to play your cantrips, and sculpt your games.
Yeah, and then on the creature suite, there's a lot of flying here, which is not present so much in the Tarmogoyf version. But there is a creature that generates a lot of card advantage. Your version had Uro. Here we have Ethereal Forager, which is a newish card. I don't know what set this card came out of. I first saw it in play against me. I didn't actually know the card was printed, and then I was playing, and it was just there. I was like, oh, look at this. And it's a 6-mana flying 3/3 creature with Delve that has a very unique way of generating card advantage, which I think in the design space was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, this card is I like calling it the Spelly Belly because it's a whale, it expels. It's kind of cute. But you're right? This is maybe the first take at a Dreadhorde Arcanist substitution for these kind of decks. Like, it's 2 mana, but there are some caveats associated with it, and it does have a lot of pull in the mid to late game when your opponent might be depleted of removal spells. You can start buying back your Ponders and Brainstorms or Bolts or whatever it is that you're looking for, right? I think this is a reasonable addition to the deck. Obviously, you don't want to have 4 copies because you could just very easily get clogged on the card because Delve is not a free cost. But I do think this does give the deck a little bit more mid-rangey / like longevity, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting, just to see how it slots in and how it performs. I'm kind of curious to see how it'll show up in the match.
All right, and then let's look at the other build of the Artifact Storm deck that we're going to be watching. Schlesinger playing a very similar deck to what I was just displaying. Let's see if I can spot some differences here. Okay, we do have Paradox Engine, which is kind of an alternative win condition to the Aetherflux Reservoir. One of the two is likely going to be present in any build of this kind of deck. This one does have the Paradox Engine, which both allow basically an infinite advantage once you really get going in different ways, and allow you to win the game. This one most commonly is going to win, barring Cardin Wishes, with just an infinite large Ballista, which the other deck cannot do. We do see all 4 defense grids main deck, just like we did on the other one. And there is a Mesmeric Orb present here. So this is again all of the builds of this deck, however they may vary, have all adopted the Mesmeric Orb technology. I think that's a fairly recent development. I only first saw it within the last month. And now it seems to be adopted everywhere. And 4 Karn Zyna versions. We saw Kellen Pastor playing 3 in the board. This version has all 4 as ways to challenge control decks and just have something to do if actually Null Rod worst case scenario comes into play.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be the more proactive deck in this matchup. I think the big thing is going to be getting your mana down, like I mentioned before, and then trying to land one of your 4 drops. It looks like we're in the game too. Sweet.
Yeah, all right. So we're going to be watching from Caleb Yetman's side, as we did watch from the Artifact Storm perspective a few rounds ago. We are watching at Nerd Rage, like always, with Force perspective, so you can really put yourself in the place of one of the players, in this case, Caleb Yetman. We have a Wasteland and a Stifle. This isn't the best matchup for Stifle, but if you can catch a tutor effect or an untap effect, occasionally you can seriously disrupt things.
Yeah, being able to leverage something like Stifle alongside like a Lightning Bolt to take down a Karn or a Flip Delver is going to be one of the fringe case scenarios where Stifle is going to, actually look good. But in general, I do agree it's not that great in the matchup. The 2 critical cards, though, first you've got Pressure. That's great. And now you've got your Daze and you have Wasteland, which are, I think, going to be 2 of the more important cards in the early turns, just to infiltrate your opponent's mana base and then also stop them from casting spells.
Mm-hmm. Now, this Artifact Storm deck is pretty volatile, both swings high and low, and Schlesinger here with a mulligan to 4 cards to start things off. Not ideal, but recoverable with some draws.
Okay, this is a pretty crazy start here. This is exactly what you want, right? In the matchup, you want to be able to cement your mana, and I really like the way that Gall is sequencing this. Has played the Lotus Petal to play around a potential Daze here. Force of Will is one of those cards where, like, if they have it, they have it. But your plan for that is probably to just like keep jamming threats and make them force multiple times. So this situation looks pretty good here. Yeah, I mean, this is 4 mana, another Grimoire, yeah.
That's if that had been the Mystic Forge there, I would have said, despite being on a 4-card hand, that Gaul was significantly ahead. But given that it's just another mana source, that's rough. So it's going to be a race. Well, additionally, Delver is going to start clocking, but it's going to be, can Caleb find a Force of Will or a Force card before Gaul finds a real threat?
Ooh, and this is interesting. I really like this. Holding up the Stifle for this turn, getting in with the Delver, choosing not to Ponder or Brainstorm, and you could actually stifle the Manifold Key activation, which would get rid of the Lotus Petal or tap one of the Grim Monoliths, and then you're looking really clean.
Yeah, however, somewhat punished by the draw of a second key, and now the Stifle's just not cast. And I mean, this was a Brainstorm, so there's something to do, but casting that Ponder would have been, nice if Caleb knew that Stifle was going to be useless for the turn. Probably the Ponder gets fired off, but maybe you hold off anyway, you think, because you don't have a shuffle effect yet?
Yeah, I mean, sequencing with cantrips in this stage of the game is pretty tricky. I think if you are going to hold up the Stifle, you're pretty priced into playing the Brainstorm on the end step, because you can't just keep letting turns pass and not accomplish anything here. This also guarantees that the Delver sequence is going to flip, which is important, because if you let Gaul just keep doing things, it's not going to go well.
Right. So we do have the Delver flipping here, but 3 points a turn. I mean, that's something. But without a force effect in hand, I mean, if Gaul draws something, I mean, whatever threat Gaul draws, they are all strong. And there is currently 11 mana available after the Artifact Storm deck untaps next turn, which casts basically everything. And then some.
Yeah, for sure here. But with no cards in hand here, it's going to be pretty... I mean, this Ponder is going to be pretty clutch here. With the Stifle, the Foothills, and the Brainstorm, I think you just priced into... Yeah, keeping the Foothills here, unfortunately, but this will let you get the Sprite Dragon into play, and then next turn you can Brainstorm maybe into a Force of Will if it's looking really scary.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Paradox Engine. Well, that's not really a threat. That's an enabler. It's nice, I guess. Now Mystic Forge is even better, but it was already going to be pretty good.
Yeah. That is so sweet, though, actually. Paradox Engine, I remember like a long, long time ago when this deck, sort of first started seeing play, actually getting to watch the Paradox Engine, fire off and do Paradox Engine things. My opponent had 180 mana at one point, and I was just like, this is sweet.
Yeah, it is pretty nifty. And it does work really well with Mystic Forge, as whenever you get stuck, if you have something else to cast, you can untap it and then clear the cop card away again. But without anything else going on, it's a little rough. Okay, so there is the Brainstorm, fresh cards. Well, one fresh card, and this is... Caleb is still vulnerable.
Yeah, I think it's pretty tricky here. I wonder if you're supposed to actually fetch before you Brainstorm here, because there's only two cards that actually really matter in this exact board state, which is Force of Will and Force of Negation. And here, if you Brainstorm, one of the cards, so it's not the best Brainstorm, but then, this guarantees at least that you have a fetch land to do stuff. And fortunately, Caleb draws into a second copy of Brainstorm, which we can fire off to, Hail Mary, find a force if we need to. And we've seen so many cards that I would hedge towards that. But it's again, it's really tricky, and I'm not even sure what I would do in this situation. I'd probably do something similar. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I actually agree with you. I was surprised to see the fetch not blown first, but this is how things are now. There's another Brainstorm. Okay.
And what's really weird too here, or maybe something to consider, is just the cost to not playing the Sprite Dragon the earlier turn here. I mean, there's a potential chance that, Brainstorm is going to find Force of Will, and that's looking really good here. But, factoring in how fast you need to kill your opponent versus, how much time you are allowed to give them to, draw into potential top decks like Karn or whatnot is definitely some sort of advanced calculus that I certainly can't do on the fly. But, here it looks like things are going pretty well now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now with the presumably young Pyromancer probably joining in, unless the Stifle's held up again, but I think I would play the Pyromancer if it was me. I want to push that damage through. Even though it doesn't maybe look like it's going to necessarily matter this turn, but if there's an Ancient Tomb that would potentially ding some more life off of Yamakiller,
Yeah, I mean, this is also like if you get to force something, then you literally have lethal, right? 3 from the Delver, 2 and 1, and then 2 more. So this is a great setup here.
Yeah, and Inventor's Fair is drawn, so that is the ideal target for Stifle, but even so, the Force of Will should handle things.
Ooh, okay. I like this a lot. Yeah, I mean, that's sweet, right? Paradox Engine there is going to untap everything. Now you can use the Inventor's Fair to pick up whatever it is that you want. Maybe the Ballista, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one that gets through the Force of Negation, so that might be the choice here to have it more likely to be resolving. But we know that the Force of Will is going to stop whatever this may be.
Yeah. And this is exactly the tension that I was talking about from Caleb's hand, right? Which is if you hadn't drawn that Force of Will, like you just feel so bad losing to whatever top deck you know that Yama has. And fortunately we were able to find it. So, now we've got this game basically locked up here. Okay, Mystic Forge is also good.
Yep, and this will seal things. Unfortunate for Gal Schlesinger, mulling to 4 cards. There's really not much. It's tough to fight 3 cards down.
Especially in a deck where this is sort of like I feel like this is kind of like a critical mass deck where you want to have a lot of mana sources and then like just the right number of threats. And so mulliganing means that you're going to have to give up one of the two. And that's exactly the sort of situation that Delver wants to put you in, where you are forced to compromise and then play into, the lines that you don't want to play into.
And so Forkbolt will finish off game 1 here. And Caleb Yetman will take it down. Up a game, and the winner of this match will make top 8. The loser is not necessarily out, but they will have to sweat the breakers, most likely, whereas the winner is just clean and in. So we saw the Delver side take down game 1. I don't know, maybe we'll bring the list back up again. We'll see kind of who we think is going to gain more in the sideboarding. Generally, the Artifact Storm deck gains a lot against specific matchups and basically nothing the rest of the time. Because the sideboard is fairly narrow because so much of it is dedicated to wish targets.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the sideboard and the way that Gall has chosen to put this together, 4 Karn Scion of Urza is great against the control decks, but really you don't want clunkier 4 mana spells in this matchup.
Yeah, no, that's not going to be much. And obviously these players know what they're doing, as they didn't take much time sideboarding, and there's the Null Rod showing up on a 5-card hand, and Null Rod is the card you want against this Artifact Storm deck. That and Collector Roof. Actually, it's a 4-card hand. And if you're going to hold a 4, this is a pretty good 4.
This is a really good 4, right? You get the turn 1 Delver aggression, and then you have the turn 2 Null Rod. After that, you just cross your fingers and you hope, you pray to the magic gods to draw what you need to draw here. And also you need to hope that Yama kept 7 cards this time, right? And we sort of saw like that was a really explosive 4-card hand in game 1. This one with the full 7 cards, well, maybe not as explosive as I was hoping for, but this is
No, the Artifact Storm deck definitely has the capability of winning the game on turn 1 or 2 with a good draw, and that's not it. This is the defensive draw against the Force of Wills, and that's not what Caleb has. Caleb has the other end of it, and there is a good chance that Gall is dead already.
Yeah, right. This is one of the downsides to the Artifact deck, which is, you do have that vulnerability to Null Rod, and when the Delver opponent does it, this is the deck that is like, look at this sequence, right? Delver just flipped. There's another Delver coming in now, putting you down to 16, guaranteeing that or very likely that the other Delver is going to flip. And then suddenly, it's just
Dunzo.
Yama sees the writing on the wall. So,
yeah. I mean, it's already a case where a month ago, I feel like it's unlikely that you see 2 Null Rods in a sideboard. I'm not even sure you see 1 very often. And just with the number of people running leagues playing this deck, trying it out, you're going to see an increase in the response. And we saw a couple players earlier today with 2 Null Rods, and it's a nightmare of a card.
Yeah.
Deck.
But I really do like that part of the metagame, which is just like, picking, the 1 or 2 of that are very good in certain matchups. I mean, the way the format is right now with Dreadhorde gone and Oko gone, you can't just expect to play like the generic answers and then like ride on these very powerful cards to end the game. You actually have to pick and choose your battles. So there is a little bit of deck building aspect that goes into, how you want to chef up whatever it is. And Null Rod seems to be the play for this weekend here, as the artifact decks are, doing really well, and Null Rod is the best way to shut them down.
Yeah, definitely. And that is, it's, it forces players to make a choice. You have to, like you're saying, you dump your generic cards, you have to play more powerful, more targeted things for certain matchups. And when you draw them, they're absolute hammers. So we do have a backup match. They're in the process of sideboarding right now. So as soon as they're ready, we'll go down for game 2 and watch, I don't know what the matchup is, but another match that's presumably playing for top 8. Okay, look, we have a moment here. I guess we'll look at the deck list from one of the players at least, while we have Niv Shmuely playing Bant Miracles. So this is kind of where you used to always be at.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something here. Niv is probably one of the better pilots that I've seen recently playing this. In fact, has won one of the recent Legacy challenges, the weekend challenges on Magic Online. So if there is a person who knows what to do and what the recipe for success is, this is the player to watch for sure. Now, that being said, I'm still not very confident in the deck, but I'm very excited to see how Niv is going to play this one out.
Okay, if we have the other deck list, we'll have a chance to get it in here. All right, well, we don't have time for it because the game is starting, so that's even better. So here we go with our backup match in round 6 here, playing for top 8. We have Niv Shmuely up a game against Tom Tracey playing Temur Delver.
Okay, and this is kind of interesting, the sideboarding process here, right? We've got the Relic of Progenitus, presumably for a card like Hooting Mandrills, or for a card like Tarmogoyf, just sort of slow the aggression down. Or, Relic of Progenitus also really good against a card like Klothys. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see how this one plays out here. And I guess the other thing to notice is, this is one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of Bant in this matchup, is because look at the mana base here, right? You're pretty susceptible to Wasteland now that you don't have Arcum's Astrolabe.
Right. Yeah, and this Icefang Quaddle is not going to have an easy time acquiring Death Touch, even if it does make it onto the board.
Okay. And I like this Daze a lot here, right? Because Relic of Progenitus is just so good against your threats that, you do get set back from your 2-drops a little bit, but I think, stopping the Relic to ensure that your Tarmogoyfs do a little bit more damage later on, power play.
All right. Well, the basic Snow Forest comes up, and that's actually a pretty nice draw, I would say, for Mr. Shmuely. It allows it makes it much more likely that the Death Touch will eventually be acquired for the Quaddle.
Yep.
Wasteland is the land number 2 for Tom Tracey, which now may actually not find a target too easily, or at least not one until he's further behind.
For sure here. And I actually really, really like playing the Icefang Quaddle on this turn here. The reason that I like playing it is that because you saw your opponent daze the Relic of Progenitus on turn 1, and now, you're likely to be able to fire off this Icefang and not have to worry about daze. They could have double daze, but then you just get so far ahead on mana that it's a pretty good situation. So, looks like things are going pretty good here. I like also that we chose to keep the mana sources, Terminus on top, so things are looking pretty good.
All right, so let's see. Shuffle this away. 2 explosives probably gives plenty of removal in the early game, so no problem shuffling away the Miracle, especially when the alternative is to have it in your hand. I have to say I'm a little surprised that a white source wasn't fetched there, so there'd be a redundant white after the first one gets wastelanded.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. There's 2 ways to think about it, right? Is that if you get the basic, then you have like a volume of lands going into the future. But here, like not getting the dual means that you're going to get even more hurt by something like the Wasteland.
Yeah, because now we're potentially being cut off of a color. And, well, we don't have great need for it right now. It's still nice to have.
Okay. Yeah, the good news is that your Rug Delver opponent has 1 card, 2 cards in their hand now. You've got a bunch of cards here, but actually what's really awkward is that none of these cards handle the Brazen Borrower, right? Because the Wasteland's going to cut you off the Tundra, so you can't even play the Engineered Explosives. This is a little bit stressful.
Well, that's a decent answer to it. But So okay, so the options here are to explosives for 1 now, or to wait on the Shark Typhoon to trade with the Brazen Borrower and then worry about the explosives in the future, which seems to be the way that Mr. Shmuely is going about it.
Mm-hmm. And this sequencing is nice, I think, because you want to get your land drops. You want to unlock this Council's Judgment. So cycling here gets you further into the deck, and also, mitigates about the same amount of damage, actually more now. So, this is just pretty good play here.
That's pretty painful though. Oh no! So the token gets bounced immediately. No block happens, and then Tropical Island is drawn, which is also not really very helpful.
Tropical Island will be good maybe in a future turn. So if your opponent flashes in the second Brazen Borrower, now you actually have 5 full mana sources, so you can play the EE and then use it to kill the Brazen Borrower here. Now this is interesting.
Yeah.
The sequencing here is okay, just to deploy all the engineered explosives. I like this. I like this. Your opponent's got 1 card.
I actually, I'm going to go their way. I actually don't like this. I think I would rather get rid of. Okay, you know what? With the Delver not being flipped, yeah, I think this is fine. Because you're not taking 6, you're only taking 4, and taking 4 versus 3 is not that different. So I'm okay. I'm on board with this.
Yeah. Wow, and that's a big draw as well.
Yeah, that will come in handy.
What's kind of interesting to me, though, is that the Delver didn't flip, but we also didn't play a land here. So how do you use that information to make up the next?
Well, yeah, I mean, the most obvious explanation is that a redundant creature that is either a 1 or a 3 drop was drawn, and you can't play that into an explosives on the board. So it's also nice that if we have to force, we can. It'd be frustrating to have to force a stifle here, but you have to do it if you have to do it.
Yeah, I definitely agree here. Yeah, we're the first hit that we took from 11 down to 7, pretty free. Now going down to 1 life total, not acceptable when you have literal Force of Will in your hand here. So,
yeah, I don't mind taking this 1 point here, and it does. Yeah, Niv does let it come through.
This is a little bit awkward, actually, because I wonder. I mean, if you're going to blow up the Delver secrets, anyways, actually, you know what? Maybe this is based on that sort of analysis that you presented, right? Maybe that they have like another 1 drop in their hand, and that might explain it. But going down to 6 is a pretty critical number because in increments of 3, that's like 2 lightning bolts or like a Brazen Borrower and a bolt or something. So.
Okay, so this makes casting the other Brazen Borrower basically end, no more mana development for the game, but 2 swings will do it.
Yeah, and I didn't get to see what the Brazen Borrower put, or what the Mystic Sanctuary put on the top of the deck here, but I'm assuming it's a cantrip.
It's a ponder.
Okay, yeah. So, classic miracle situation. You're just praying to the top of the deck to get you what you need. And I mean, look, Niv is one of those better pilots for sure here. And I'm pretty sure Niv will be able to find exactly the sorts of plowshares of the Icewind Coatl or whatever it is. Yeah, and an Uro too, because why not?
Oh, yeah, that's pretty good. Ooh. I'm a little surprised that the Force of Will wasn't kept.
Yeah, I think that might be a problem in the future turns here. However, Uro is just so incredible at this stage of the game here. Now you have Force of Will, and like if you can buy back the Uro, that functionally is a removal spell for the Brazen Borrower since you're gaining 3 life every turn.
Yeah, sure. I feel like I would rather not have the Ponder and Force and I put not have the Brazen Borrower, but okay.
Yeah. I think I'm in the same boat as you, but I totally understand where Niv is coming from. And now you get to play Uro with Force of Will backup. Yeah. And honestly, like,
it's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, because you have the initiative now, because you're this is like, I mean, technically speaking, you'd still have Uro, but having Force of Will now, like, not bad, I guess. You know what I mean? As opposed to not having Force of Will. Now, this seems like a much harder lock with the back to basics in play, shutting down all the duels.
Yeah, this feels like it's game over now. The only real out was now from this scenario would be Mountain or Red Source Lightning Bolt, and that's shut off.
Mm-hmm. Which would be pretty sick here. I'm not going to lie, right? This is like one of the reasons also why I like looking at Delver and just playing Delver is because of the capacity to win these games are seemingly unwinnable. You know, you have the reach and lightning bolt.
Mm-hmm. Well, Uro undoes a lot of the reach of a lot of cards, and this game with one attack here, I would say that this match is probably donezo.
Mm-hmm.
Sylvan Library, sure, that's probably not gonna. Well, we'll see. But the real overall take of the last couple turns is that Niv has managed to maneuver this game to a point where it's almost impossible that he could lose.
Yeah, I mean, look at this right now. Swords to Plowshares for your Brazen Bar. Oh, you want to Force of Will that? Here's a Veil of Summer. Oh, you somehow have something else? All right, well, here's a Force of Will too. So this is one of those end stage games in this matchup where the control deck just was able to stabilize at the critical turn and, you know, did what needed to be done.
Mm-hmm. And here is a Daze, which obviously can be paid for, but Tom Tracey earns the ability to pick up a land, which allows the land to be replayed and is one mana source that didn't exist beforehand, at least.
Mm-hmm. And this does scream to me like a Hooting Mandrills or something, because Volcanic Island for the back to basics seems like the most obvious line. So if your opponent does pick up the other one, you have to think, what are the castable relevant spells? Mandrill seems to be like the one.
Mm-hmm. Although that doesn't seem like it's going to make much headway against this Uro here.
Yeah, I mean, Uro just also being a 6/6 giant is kind of crazy. You know what I mean? Like, not only does it gain life and draw cards, it also just so quickly ends the game when in this kind of matchup. So
yeah, and so Bant Miracles cleans up the Rug Delver there, where it looked a little dicey for a couple turns. But
yeah, I mean, there were a couple decision points that I probably would have sequenced differently, but the way that the game played out rewarded Niv so much for those specific decisions, right? So ending up with that forcible to keep the Uro or force the Uro into play, identifying that with the back to basics, opponent is limited on mana, so they're probably not going to be able to Pyroblast, and then we have forcible to lock things up. I mean, actually, now that I think about it, pretty impressed with the play there, and probably one of the reasons why, you know, I haven't had much success with Miracles compared to before is that my choices are not as sharp as they used to be. So maybe that's why I'm playing Delver. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. That was well done. That was smoothly navigated, and if Shmuely will be in the top 8, and maybe the Rug Delver, maybe his opponent will too, but Shmuely definitely will be in. That is that's gonna be the last match that we show of the Swiss today, but we got some time to kill before the end of the round and the top 8 gets locked in. So to start off with here, we have some more deck lists that I pulled, the fringe deck lists I pulled from Magic Online to challenge our guests. So we're gonna start off and see what Anuraag thinks about Combo Merfolk.
Oh, Combo Merfolk. Okay. I have actually played this deck, and that's kind of crazy because if I didn't stream Legacy as much as I did, I would never have touched this deck. Mm-hmm. But I had the pleasure of playing this deck with one of the like best Merfolk players like in the community at TuxDev, and they've been playing this deck forever and ever and ever, right? And the combo is basically just like what Paradigm Shift and Thassa's Oracle to get the combo killer, whatever it is. And I see it, right? Because typically speaking, Merfolk didn't really have this combo element, but due to cards like Plague Engineer and even like Oko and Dreadhorde Arcanist, you know, at the time when this deck was starting to pick up, you know, just steam or whatever it is, the transition here makes sense because you're just not able to keep up with your creatures like you used to, right? Like Phantasmal Image, nowhere in this deck because it doesn't really compete the way that it normally used to, right? Especially when you have Chalice of the Void. Your images will still die unless they're like copies of True Name Nemesis or something, but True Name is also just like kind of a liability now that Plague Engineer is like one of the most played creatures in the format. So I definitely really like this. And Oracle, honestly, pretty sweet, right? Just like it's one of the best combo finishers. And even the body is like a 1/3 body. When you have a couple lords into play, it's not nothing. So kind of cool.
This deck is, Paradigm Shift. I saw this list. I was like, what the heck is going on here? This is, maybe this deck's been around for a while, but it was new to me. And, yeah, I thought that was pretty neat. It's something that certainly was off the beaten path. And again, every time I see it, Chalice of the Void and Aether Vial, and you know that Chalice of the Void's going on 1 every time.
Every time.
And every time someone goes turn 1 Aether Vial, turn 2 Chalice of the Void, I just want to punch them because it's just not right. You're just not supposed to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the only way I justify that is like the deck is kind of underpowered, so you have to like take some deck building calculation risks and things like
Sure.
that. And it's Magic, right? This is a game of inches. So
Yeah. All right. So that is one. We got two more to get to later on of our fringe decks, but we're gonna step all the way here for a couple minutes while round 6 the other players are finishing their games, and we'll be back. We'll talk about some Strixhaven preview cards with Anuraag when we come back in a few minutes. Don't go away. Top 8 is coming soon.